I don't know if y'all have heard, but Minnesota's got some wild shit going on in our state legislature. Now, Minnesota's a pretty blue state on a national scale, but we do have a lot of rural areas, and on a state scale, we have a pretty even mix of power, generally. And that's not a bad thing. As a state, we get a lot done. And this generally forces the Republicans in Minnesota to not be the fucking Looney Tunes we see in other places in the country. But that apparently is a thing of the past now, because Minnesota Republicans are doing a coup in slow motion. Here's what happened. The Minnesota State House, which is usually really close, got a perfect split. 67 Democrats, 67 Republicans in the most recent election. And Republicans are such sore losers that they are throwing a fit over a tie. So Democrats came to the table after this tied election. They're like, hey, neither of us want a majority. Let's work on a power sharing agreement. Which is awesome. That forces them to be bipartisan, so they actually get some shit done. And Republicans were like, yeah, we could do that. Or, and hear us out, we could throw a temper tantrum. See, I don't know if you know this about us, but we're fucking creeps, and we have been stalking a Democratic candidate for months. Now, this candidate, Curtis Johnson, who I actually had on a live before the election, great guy, won his election in a landslide. It's District 40B. It's a suburb of the Twin Cities. Now, this district is a solid blue district. There's no chance a Republican is ever going to win it. So what Johnson's opponent, Paul Wilkstrom, decided to do instead of campaigning was just creepily stalk Curtis Johnson for months. See, what Curtis Johnson did was he moved from a neighboring suburb in Little Canada to Roseville, which is in the district he won. Now, to me, a rural Minnesotan, these two places are the same fucking place. But they are technically two different districts, and Minnesota state law requires that a candidate live in their district for at least 6 months before the general election. Now, Curtis declared his residency at his new apartment in the district with plenty of time to be eligible for the election. He also still had his old apartment in the process of moving, and this fucking creeper, Paul Wilkstrom, followed him around like a psychotic ex-girlfriend, taking pictures of him and shit. And then after he won, he sued, saying he hadn't been living in the new apartment as much as he should have to qualify. The judge ends up ruling that Johnson doesn't meet the residency requirements and the seat is vacant until we can hold a special election. Then Republicans threw another fit about another election where the Democrat won by like 20 votes, and they're like, that's not enough, and they sued over that one, but the judge ruled in Tabke's favor and the Democrat gets to hold his seat. So as it stands right now, until we can hold a special election for District 40B, there's 66 Democrats, 67 Republicans. And when we do finally hold that special election, which has also been a clusterfuck because the judge ruled that the governor can't call for a special election right now when he called for it, and it's dumb. But when it does finally roll around, which should be sooner than later because the people in 40B currently have no representation, their representative will be a Democrat because it is a safely blue district. And we will be back to a perfect 67-67 split. But the Republicans decided that instead of moving forward with the power sharing agreement and doing business in the way that's best for Minnesotans, they were going to do a coup. They're like, we want to nominate the Speaker of the House and have all the power. And the Democrats were like, no, this isn't what the people of Minnesota voted for, and we're not going to let you do that. So Democrats just refused to show up for the speakership vote, and we're like, you can't vote then because we don't have quorum. There's not enough people represented to make the vote. And the Secretary of State, who is also an elected position in Minnesota, not appointed by the governor, came in and said, you don't have quorum, and banged the gavel and said, everybody go home. And then after he left, the Republicans walked back up, banged the gavel, and then just played make-believe elect the Speaker of the House and do legislative stuff. They made up make-believe committees and passed make-believe rules, all to favor Republicans, and committees with all Republicans on them. Coup shit. Like, Republicans, why are you so obsessed with doing coups? Just stop it. So that's where we are, and this is completely unprecedented. We have no idea what the fuck is happening right now. Like, where do we go from here? I don't know. Nobody's ever done this shit before, and I don't think any of it's gonna hold up in court, but it's definitely gonna go through court, which is just gonna be another nightmare. And all of this because Republicans are trying to illegitimately steal power they can't get themselves elected to. And in my opinion, they should be taken to court for not upholding their oath of office, and every single one of them should be thrown out. If you want to throw out Curtis Johnson over a technicality because you were a creep spending a fucking year playing Peeping Tom through his window, well, why don't we have 67 more special elections for all of you fucks who think you can just take power that you were not given? But yeah, just fucking wild times, man, and not the kind of wild shit you want to see happening in your state.